Hey everyone, I'm Todd Wayne, along with Ronnie Heelan. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranormal Podcast. Now, coming up on this episode of Paranormal, we're talking to Heather Leigh, and she is the founder of Exploring Paranormal, based out of Southwest Central Florida. She's a member of the International Paranormal Bureau of Investigations and Research, and a member of ParaNexus Anomalous Research Association. Now, Heather Leigh is the author of Ghosts of Southern Nevada Ghost Towns and Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas Valley. And these are part of the Haunted America series from the History Press. She's working on her next book for the Haunted America series called Haunted Florida Lighthouses. And this is to be released in the fall of 2023. Additionally, she's an author of many articles and a lecturer about all things paranormal. So grab yourself a drink and a snack. Turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranormal. Stay with us, folks. All right, Heather, thank you so much for coming on with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, geez, where do I begin?
From the beginning.
I know. It's always funny because whenever someone asks that, it's like, oh, what do I say? I'm the type of person that even though I talk about myself like almost all day long, I hate talking about myself. But we'll give it a try. Essentially, I started the paranormal journey back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was 16 or 17. My grandfather started coming to me, and I was really close with my grandfather, and that's what I think started this whole thing because he had passed in front of me. We were outside playing in the snow when I was 5, and he had a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And in addition to that trauma and being close to him, it was one of those things where why wouldn't he come see me and check in on me now and then?
Yeah.
But we lived in a house that he had never been to. We bought it long after he died. So, and back then, in order for a place to be haunted, someone had to have died there or been there. And that wasn't the case. So that just kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of researching. I've been doing it ever since. I've written several books. I host 3 podcasts, been in a couple documentaries over the years. And now we're just kind of happily living here in Florida. And my family's actually my paranormal team. So not only do I get to work with my family, but we get to travel and have a lot of fun, all, jumping off of that one first experience.
Wow.
And how old was you when you had that experience?
I want to say 16 or 17 because I was still in high school.
So you was relatively young, and that got you your curiosity piqued for the paranormal.
Right. And back then, nobody really told anybody anything. I mean, I know now we still suggest that you get, psychiatric evaluations with our clients and everything like that. But I felt so weird because my parents were sending me to the psychiatrist, the school psychiatrist, school counselors, to try to get help before they realized that, well, maybe she is seeing something.
Right. Yeah. Because that was a different time, Mm-hmm. People didn't understand. And they still don't.
No.
So.
No, and it's still good to know if someone has a underlying medical condition or mental health condition, but that's not the end all be all nowadays.
Right, because if you talked about hearing or seeing ghosts, you'd be ended up in Penhurst or something.
We'd be the spirits people are hunting now.
That's right.
Right.
They'd be like, wait a minute, if you're seeing this, you're going straight to the penitentiary there.
Right.
Or not the penitentiary, you're going to the asylum.
Or if you're me growing up as a Southern Baptist, they're like, ghosts aren't real. Ghosts aren't real. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to hell if you believe that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, here in Florida, it's the same way. I mean, we lived in Florida before we moved to Vegas, and that move kind of opened me up to my talking about it more. But where we live, it's like every corner there's a Catholic church, and you don't talk about it here.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
I'm a Southern girl, so I get it, girl.
Yeah. Now, where did you first start like a paranormal team or did get into one? Was it in Nevada?
Yes and no. I was always the type of person who was behind the scenes. My experiences that I had as a young child were in Illinois, where I grew up. And we were one of those weird families, I guess you would say, that we didn't go to Disney World for vacation. We went to Gettysburg.
Okay.
every summer for vacation. So, my parents were going there for the history. I was going there for the ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Awesome.
where I met Mark Nesbitt, and he taught me a lot. I mean, every summer I'd go with the long list of questions, and I'd track him down and try to find him and ask him a whole bunch of questions. And then in Florida, I moved here right after college, and I still played behind the scenes, but I had a lot of teams here who would call and ask me questions because they knew I did a lot of research, and I would go to different, team events just to meet the teams and talk to the different people. But it wasn't until I moved to Vegas that I had a friend of mine who had a team, and he finally said, hey, I'm bringing on new members. Anyone interested? And I called him, and he's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for you to join my team. But he didn't know how to ask because he knew I always did everything solo. Yeah. And that's kind of when I got my foot in the door on how teams work. I don't want to say that it was a bad experience, but it wasn't a positive experience either. And that's when I left that team, which I still work closely with because they're still operating out there in Vegas. But I had my own team, and it's my husband and my son. Essentially, my son was interested in doing all the different things I was doing, and my husband wanted to be a part of it only because my son wasn't old enough to go to residentials yet because he was only 16, and he didn't want me going alone, of course. So that's how he got into it. And now I tell people that I like my little team. I'll work with other teams if they need us to come help them, or if they need someone else to go with on an investigation. But I like my team because I've trained them right.
Right. And it's also easier to keep track of where everyone is.
Right. Yep, exactly.
So,
and we're the perfect little mix. My son has all these new ideas. I mean, he's 19 now, but he has all these new ideas, coming up with strange theories, but he's laid back and lets me do the research. He just likes going on the investigations and asking questions. And then my husband will help with the evidence analysis, but he's the skeptic of the group.
Okay. All right. Well, you need that.
Right. Yep.
So let me ask this. How old was your son when he got into this field? Like, he really was like, Mom, hey, I want to get into this.
No, he never did. He started asking questions, and I think he was 14, almost 15. It was the Halloween before he turned 15. I actually took him. It was funny because we used to volunteer at a museum. And I would joke around saying, oh, your place is haunted. Can I do it? And whenever there was a break, they let me do mini investigations. It was like a replica of a mine.
Okay.
And I would go into the mine, and it was haunted. And I said, wouldn't it be fun? Because what they do is they decorate the mine into a haunted house every Halloween. And I said, wouldn't it be fun if we took in small groups throughout the night and showed them what a mock paranormal investigation was like? And that was his first investigation that he had ever been on. But he had a blast. He was asking the lead investigator that was there and helping, he was like, make sure you ask out of the box questions. So there's my son going, okay, is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Is the round earth or flat? And he's the only one getting answers the whole night.
Wow.
Right. That's awesome.
So, and ever since then, he just absolutely loved going on the investigations with me.
Well, that's good. That's good. And you get to teach him right.
Right. Yep.
So now after you settled into a team of your own, what happened then?
Well, the first exciting thing that happened for us is, I still had one or two clients that I brought with me from the other team, and it wasn't intentional, but it was just, I was working with them closely. And when I told them I was leaving, I gave them, I'm like, here's who you're going to be in contact with. And they're like, no, we want to come with you. And our whole purpose wasn't really to do residentials, but I wasn't going to leave them hanging because I had already started helping them. Our main purpose is we want to take more of a scientific approach to the paranormal field to kind of make it more standardized and get it to where we can actually compare evidence and have the same data points across the board. Not going to happen in my lifetime, I don't think, but I figured you got to start somewhere.
Well, and what kind of I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
What kind of scientific experiments are you looking to utilize?
I want to do a whole bunch of different things. And my dad's a scientist at heart, so he throws theories my way as well. But I want to do more research. I've already started doing it with just, what I tell people is if you want to use the scientific method, start small and, like use an Eddy Plus and put it in the same place for 1 hour every day and document everything that happens. and then see, and then compare it to the moon phases. So I really one theory I have is that we're on parallel universes, and that's tied to the moon phases. So when it's a full moon or a new moon, that's where our universes cross. And that's why we have more paranormal activity during those times. Other experiments are like the magnetic fields. Why don't we have paranormal activity that dates back pretty much before like Roman times? Why is everything, Civil War era, early 1900s and stuff like that in most cases? And one theory my dad tossed out that I want to research more is, like they say, in however many thousands of years, the Earth's magnetic forces are going to flip. If they flip, is that going to erase paranormal activity? Because it basically like resets the magnetic field of the Earth.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, it's things that we might not ever get an answer to because we don't live long enough. But it's things that I would love. And then one theory that I've kind of fell into the rabbit. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jake.
That's all right.
No, is the Superman theory. And that is, it came from the UK, and they were talking about how they inscribed an entire Bible onto a small disc of crystal quartz. And then based off of that theory, because crystal quartz can be used to record on, areas with high concentration of that in the Earth, such as you have the Nevada Triangle, Bermuda Triangle, Alaska Triangle, all have high concentrations of that. And that's why they have strange paranormal activity there.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I was just talking about the Bermuda Triangle the other day.
So do you do do you go over like ley lines and things like that as well?
Yeah, we document everything. We do everything from ley lines to, of course, the geographic points, weather, temperature, thermodynamics of the area, or the, thermal heat and everything. I mean, if it can be documented, we document it. We go as far as, the Earth's concentration in that area as well. And we're trying to find consistencies among areas that have, like, for example, areas that have high amounts of clay has so much activity versus areas that have that quartz crystal.
Okay. All right. So now you're into crystals. That's part of the science, and that makes sense because water has a certain thing, and it just minerals in general can have different paranormal things that occur by them. So yes, that's interesting. Very interesting. So let me ask this now. When you do, like, you get into the scientific method, okay? Now, when you're doing that, do you take in consideration like solar flares and, atmospheric pressures and things like that? Or is that way too much to get into?
No, that's exactly what's needed for this field. Just because, it may or may not be connected, but we don't know yet. And until we start, documenting everything, because like I was talking the other day to someone, I'm like, we can document everything all we want, but if team A is only documenting the temperature, but team B is only documenting the moon phase or the solar flares, they can't compare data because they weren't documenting the same thing.
Right.
And that's why I want to have that universal approach to investigating. And I hear all the time people are like, you can't use the scientific method in this field because, ghosts don't act on command. And that's not what we're looking for. I know in my mind and heart, I know paranormal activity exists. That's not what I'm trying to prove. I'm trying to prove the how.
Right.
And that you get from the data, which can be repeated. When a ghost responds, this meter goes off or this happened in the room. That's all documentable data.
Yes. And by utilizing the atmospheric pressures and the solar anomalies that happen, but you can do all that, but to do it every investigation would be it would be redundant, don't you think?
Sometimes it does get redundant, and a lot of the times that is stuff that's done after the investigation. like once we have all of our evidence reviewed and all of our notes, documented, you could easily go back and get that information to plug in later, as long as you have the date and time.
Yes.
So, I mean, I still have cases that we've been on that I have sticky notes on them that says, hey, you still need to get X, Y, and Z, and I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Right. And that brings me up to this point here. You said about if you go back in history, there's not really much paranormal research that we know of. I mean, I don't know of too many people past, and if you read the Bible, that's nothing but a great big book of paranormal that deals with witchcraft and sorcery and sacrificing, and it deals with everything. So that's kind of your first reference to the paranormal, as they talk about ghosts, the Holy Ghost, things like that. And then you can go back to people like Prince Demetrius Golitsyn. He was a Russian prince. He was a priest, a paranormal investigator as well. And he came to America in 1792. So that is really crazy, because I would love to see what some of his notes were.
Right.
I mean, from that far back, it's incredible. And the only reason I brought it up is because we live by Prince Golitsyn and that tomb that he's in, and it's clearly marked that he was a paranormal investigator. So that's very interesting.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that, because there have been reports that I found, but not much on it. But I want to say back into like the 800 AD, there were reports in China of some paranormal activity, but not too much. And that's the problem, is they didn't document it thoroughly. So we can't confirm or deny that they weren't looking into it back then.
Exactly. And then as far as like equipment, this is a big one for me, because a lot of people have no idea what the equipment does. So, and it's true. I mean, you tell somebody, ask them what does a REM pod do, or what does a Mel meter do, or a K2 meter, they have no clue. They watch it being done and use it, and that's it. They know it makes a noise when something close gets to it, but couldn't that noise from that Mel meter or REM pod, couldn't that be from a solar flare that happened 4 hours ago that's now just hitting?
And that's why we need to document that. And I laugh because there's pieces of equipment that I don't even know how it works because there's so much out there. But people need to learn what can affect the equipment before they actually use it, if they're going to use it. Because like you said, a solar flare could have happened, but if you don't document that happened, you just think the REM pod's going off for no reason. And you also need to know if the REM pod's going to go off of you, because some people are, I don't really want to say magnetic and body chemistry, but some people's body chemistries might cause equipment to go off.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, what do you think of cell phones being used in paranormal research?
Unless I'm in a bad neighborhood, my phone gets turned off and left in the car. But there was one location, it was a bad neighborhood, so it got turned off and put with my bag in the other room. I don't even bring it with.
And the reason I ask this is because, like, I carry my phone to investigations. I'll put it on airplane mode, but because I don't want people trying to message me when I'm in the middle of something. But these devices, they can attract spirits. So, but some people are like, oh, you can't use that in the field. And I was just curious on what your...
Right. I mean, they can work, and, I'm all for everybody doing their own theories, because that's how we find out if these things affect anything or not. But in my past experiences, even with the phone on airplane mode, it can interfere with Mel meters, Eddy pluses. It can also cause static on EVP recorders, depending on how close it gets to the voice recorder.
So essentially, because I look at it as a tool itself, like for lots of different things. I need to know my times, things like that. And everything's digital now. So even if I have my Apple Watch on, someone could still say, well, that's going to be interference.
Right.
So how do we not get interference?
I'm a big person on non-tech tools outside of your essential tools. Like we have the Eddy Plus, we have digital voice recorders everywhere. We have digital thermometers that we use, and of course our video cameras that we have set up everywhere. But when it comes to other things, I prefer going old school. I like dowsing rods. I like pendulums. I've used, beach balls, wind chimes. I've even used, if you lay like styrofoam cups in a hallway and put a camera on it, if a spirit walks by it, in theory, it should create an electrical charge and get the cups to move towards the spirit. So those are all the different experiments that I prefer to use. And because there's no technology base to them, it makes it great because there's no interference in the other tools that we use.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting, yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would so much go with the styrofoam cups because that could be easily manipulated by just a small amount of air.
It could, and that's where you got to make sure that we bring incense with and feathers to check the room for any drafts.
Okay. All right.
And then we make sure we seal off the room with painter's tape so nobody goes in it while we're doing the experiment.
Sure. Cool. So when you're in there, what kind of digital recorders do you use? There's Saimpos, Saimpus or Simpus. I don't know. It's a weird name on them. But I have about 6 of those, and I found those to work the best. They're not high end, but they're not cheap either. And it's amazing the stuff that I've captured on there. And I've had other people who've had more expensive equipment try to record EVPs, and they're right next to each other. They get nothing, but mine gets voices. Okay. All right. And what other piece of equipment do you use?
I have 2 handheld night vision video cameras that one we put up on a tripod and just have recording whatever area we're in to get the whole room, because we want to have proof that no one is making noises or trying to contaminate anything. Because you always have the person saying, well, someone could have been doing this on the side while we have a camera showing that no one was.
Right.
And then we have one that we will carry with us from room to room. And use as well. And then other than that, I have the Eddy Plus. When I host events, I bring different equipment just because guests don't listen to this digital voice recorder when you get home, or you have to stop it every 3 minutes, rewind and listen to it. So I do have a couple spirit boxes that I'll bring to give them instant satisfaction. I don't have it anymore, but I used to have an SLS that I would bring to events, even though I would never use it on a client case. And we've also used the Anomalous, and that's more or less to people who want the entertainment.
Sure, but an Anomalous can work though.
I've actually had an experience with the Anomalous that has me questioning it, and in the aspect of, because I used to be dead set against it. Because it's like, it's pre-programmed, X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work right.
Right, random. It's just spitting out random stuff, but you can put it all together,
Right. And I had an incident where I didn't realize I had walked away from the rest of the group. And I was holding it, experimenting with it. I was even talking to the thing, you don't work. You haven't spit out a word yet today. And here I am trash talking the Anomalous. But I didn't realize I had walked around the corner and the rest of the team was no longer in sight. And the minute I did that, all of a sudden, Death, Devil, Demon, Sacrifice came across, spit it out all at once.
Oh, wow.
And I had said, who are you going to sacrifice? And just as I said that, the word you came up, and something ran its finger down my entire back, from my neck to my lower back.
Oh, wow.
My God.
I turned around, realized I was alone, and I'm like, yep, I'm out of here.
Right?
Yeah.
And I slowly walked back to where the rest of the group was, and then the thing was silent the rest of the night.
Wow. Because I had some pretty good things with an Anomalous at a lake in Florida, and there was someone that drowned there, and I was just doing for validation, and it kept saying about the lake, and I asked what happened in the lake, and it said drowned, and it still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But yes, I mean, it can. I don't know how that worked and how I got that, but it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the other hand, though, with something like that, who's to say, because we didn't program the Anomalous ourselves, that the person programming it didn't put something in GPS wise that knew you were at a lake where someone drowned. And is that, I hear that argument all the time about the Anomalous.
It's possible. I mean, didn't Bill Chappell make it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think at that time he would have put any GPS in.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would do anything to jeopardize the research.
Those early Ovulouses, they come out quite some time ago. So I kind of really doubt that there would be any kind of GPS on them. I mean, now when I'm looking at an app to use, I want to make sure that I get a hold of the people that built it and ask them if they have any GPS stuff in there. And the majority of them don't, but I do know there's a couple that do. Right. So yes, I mean, they are easy to, it depends on who's making it and what they're making it for. If they're making it just for entertainment, then absolutely. If they're making it for something to try to utilize, then yeah, that's the kind of things that we need. So it's like a music box, I don't know if you've used one, or it's it's a sensor, and if anything gets close to it, it starts to play the music box, and they work relatively well, and it's just a good tool, It's something to help you validate.
Right. Yep. And that's what we need. It's, in addition to the validating, we need to still experiment, and because the field's never going to expand or grow if we keep doing the same things over and over. Well, yes, and
I feel there's more fakes than normal in the paranormal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's obvious. It's more likes, ratings, followers. That's that kind of thing. Now I got into this back in the '80s, the early '80s. So there was no books.
Nope.
There was no one you could talk to. I mean, there might have been some books out there. I remember going to libraries trying to look up ghosts and whatnot, but you really had to do everything by trial and error. If I heard a voice in the tape, and I used a reel-to-reel tape, so if I heard something in that, I was like, whoa, where did that come from? You know what I mean? So, yes. And now it's more like, hey, if the little light's blinking, it's definitely a ghost. So.
Yeah.
So how do you, I want to back up a little bit. How do you use the pendulum in an investigation? Do y'all do the human pendulum thing? And how do you validate that?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we don't use the human pendulum. And I have a little device that we've created that is basically with dowel rods and styrofoam, so that way we can hang the dowsing rods, or not dowsing rods, the pendulums. So that way there's no human contact to it, at least to the rod. So, people are always saying, oh, you're moving your hand, or are you doing this? Yeah. And we try to take that out of there. And we've done a couple different experiments with it. I do have pendulum boards that fit into it if we want to use it, but that's not something I would ever take on a client case, because those, like Ouija boards, seem to freak clients out more than anything. But then other things that we've experimented with, and only a couple people I know that have been able to do this with me, is to get the pendulum to start spinning just using like their mind, just staring at it and trying to get it to spin. And that's something else that we're working on.
So like clairvoyance.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
So wait, now I'm a little confused. Now who's going to make it spin? You are the person that's focusing?
If we're trying to communicate with spirits, we ask the spirits to move it. And of course, we demonstrate with them how to do it, with their hands. But then we do experiments where, we try to do it with our mind, and the telekinesis and all of that stuff. But that it's not as easy, but it has worked. Okay.
So, and that's a good thing, because now you're trying different types of things, which I like. I never thought about using a pendulum in a, as a tool.
And that's the one thing that we want to experiment with the Anomalous too, is to actually sit there and think about words in hopes that that word comes up on the obelisk to show that one of the theories out there is that's why the Estes method is so great, is because if someone asks a question, it could be that person, reflecting what answer they want to hear, or even someone else is in the room thinking of an answer, and that's the answer that's getting imprinted on the recorder and not the voice of a spirit.
Well, sure, and that's where the history of the place would become paramount.
Right. Yeah.
Because
so,
you don't want to go to somebody's house and their friends. When you start telling the story, you know how the story gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So now you've just thought formed something into the house, and that's a completely true thing. Yep. So yeah, it's getting tougher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what other tools do you use? You said you use dowsing rods, and how do you try to validate there's a spirit there with dowsing rods? I've never used them. I'm just curious, and anybody else that's listening,
I'm very curious also.
Yeah.
Some in my shopping list there.
You can use dowsing rods a couple different ways, but of course you have human contamination. There are. I've seen them. I just haven't built any yet, but you can make boxes to hold the dowsing rods, similar to like how we hold the pendulums. So that way there's no human contamination. But essentially you just hold the dowsing rods as still as you can and, ask questions, but you show the spirits, cross them for no, open them up fully wide for yes, or, if you want to answer a question, move the left one or move the right one type of thing. You can do stuff like that. And it's really interesting when you feel the dowsing rod start moving and you're sitting still. And other things you can do too is dowsing rods used to be used to find water.
Yeah.
And water sources. So you could use them to, if you hold them right and your energy is in the right place, you can use them to find high amounts of electromagnetic activity in a house.
Yes. But, you would want to hold them, though, because the spirit is going to use your energy to help manipulate that.
Right. Yeah. And that's the tough call because, even with the pendulums, you want to use your energy, but you don't want your energy to interfere.
Exactly.
Right. But a legitimate paranormal investigator, someone that they're not trying to make tons of money, and they're not trying to, get all the followers and likes and the ratings. If you do it because of the science of it, then you're fine. Because everybody knows that you can move, and that's going to move that dowsing rod. So, but if you're legitimately, you would know if it moves with your help, right?
Right. You should be able to know that. And that's why I always tell people, if you're going to use dowsing rods or pendulums or any other non-tech tool that you have to hold, practice.
Yes.
Just, sit there for 15 minutes holding the dowsing rods and focus on holding them still.
Yes, because that isn't something that everybody would be able to do, because I'm definitely not the most steady person in the world. So
it took me a while to get there.
So yeah, and it's even like a pendulum. I would have to put it on like one of them hook things, that has the sand, the little sand dish there, and it kind of barely touches that. I would have to have something like that because I'm just not steady enough. So yeah.
Yeah, and with the pendulum, people always laugh at me or even joke around with me, but I can hold it and, just by thinking, I can get it to spin, move left and right, move forward and back, and then I can also get it to stop, like not just slowly come to a stop. It'll actually, if I think in my head stop, it just stops. It's like a dead drop. And everybody's like, at first they're all like, oh, you're moving it. And then when I go, okay, well, I'm going to stop it now. And then it just dead stops like that. They're like, how'd you do that?
Oh, wow. That would be pretty tricky.
Because, if I was moving my hand, it would slowly come to a stop, not just, dead stop from spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely be trippy. Because I'd be like, whoa.
I mean, I've done it a time or two. I can't do it every single time, but I've had moments when I've told it to stop and it stopped.
Right.
It always amazes me, though, when I'm using the pendulum because, I'm holding it very still. And that feeling that you get when it starts moving. Like you can feel that energy all around your hand. It's so cool. I love pendulums. That's my jam.
Yeah. And with the dowsing rods too, we were doing I needed to get some photos for a promotional video, and they wanted me to have a cemetery in the background. So we went to the small little cemetery. It's actually in the yard of a school here in town. And we went to the cemetery, went off. It was like surrounded by trees. So it was like beautiful trees in the background and cemetery stones dating back to the 1600s.
Wow.
And I pulled out the dowsing rods just to get a photo. And, for fun, I said, if anyone's here, can you cross the dowsing rods? And all of a sudden they started crossing. And I just get this big grin on my face. I'm like, they're moving. And they luckily snapped a photo at that moment when I got all giddy over it.
Wow.
It turned out to be the best photo from the whole photo shoot.
Nice. So do you do just residential, or do you do business as well?
We do basically anything that anyone needs help with. I do prefer working with different businesses to come in, because when I want to do an experiment, I really don't want to be doing it at a client's house. So we try to find businesses that are, want the answers kind of thing and are open to us coming in. And we kind of do it that way. Just because, like I said, you don't want to go to a client's house and be like, hey, I have this new technique I want to try. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're scared and want to move out of their house, but here you are experimenting with them.
Yeah.
So I save that for either businesses that invite us in, or locations that really don't need our help.
Well, yeah, but you could use a new piece of scientific, thing that you're going to try, because even the person that called you for help shouldn't have a problem with that, because you're trying to get to the bottom of what is going on. Right.
But that wouldn't be our only method because I've seen people who come up with new things and that's all they use on the investigation the entire time.
Right. But you could try it out, when you're doing all your other stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you could be like, hey, let's slip this in here and we're just going to give it a go, see what happens. And if nothing happens, then we'll just move on.
I prefer to have tested it out first. Okay. I hate going in blind into a residential and trying something completely new.
Okay. Yeah. Because you can slide that right in there. I would.
And they wouldn't know.
Right.
Right.
But no, if you're trying to get your validation if the experiment would work or not, I could see running it through some tests at business places first. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Or my favorite is when you do a residential and the client wants to stick around, and then after about a half hour, they're like, "That's not how Ghost Adventures does it."
Oh, right.
Oh my God.
Well, that's Ghost Adventures, Yeah, I totally get it. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
People see it on TV and they got to try to replicate it. And
we've even been asked where our film crew is, because we've been on a documentary, and people will be like, "Where's your film crew?" It's like, we don't go everywhere with our film crew.
Right. And if most of these people would see an actual investigation, they would be completely bored with it.
Right.
Because it's hours and hours of sitting there, for the most part, not even getting anything. So there's a lot of just, man, I know I can only sit there so long before I'm like, oh God, I got to get up. So now you write books too, right? You're an author.
Yes. Yep.
Now, when you do your books, you go in and you do, for example, I seen that you're doing something with lighthouses. Now, I know that book's not out yet, right?
No, September 11th.
Okay. So when you was going into these lighthouses to figure them out, you did a lot of research, correct?
Yeah, it's the lighthouse book I didn't do as much as I usually do, because I had knee replacement surgery at the peak of my writing that book.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of my piece to get through the knee surgery, because I was laid up in bed all day. But for that book, what I ended up doing is I relied a lot on paranormal investigators I knew, did a lot of phone calls and video chats with the owners of the lighthouses and people who had experiences that I found online. But for the other books that I've done, I try to get to 90% of the locations I cover in the book. just so I can get a feel of the place, test some theories, see if there is any paranormal activity there, and to also talk to the people who work there if it is a place that has that's in operation.
Right, and there would be how many lighthouses have you seen? I mean, not the ones in your book, but I mean in general. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of them.
Oh, Florida has over 300.
I was going to say, I mean, there's got to be quite a few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and my belief
I've been to 10 of them here.
10? Wait,
yeah.
Where are you at? What? Just a general area?
We're just north of Tampa, but south of Orlando.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was in Clearwater for the longest time.
Okay.
So, yes, and my personal thought is, lighthouses they're haunted as well anyway,
mm-hmm.
That's just how I look at it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, everything from the water fueling the activity to, I mean, the Seminole Wars and the Civil War was even an awful time for the lighthouses here in Florida.
Yes. Yes, that is true. Now, let's go backwards because you lived in Nevada, correct?
Yes.
And you did a Ghosts and Legends of Vegas Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us like a little synopsis of what that book's about?
That book covers a whole bunch of different places that we did personally investigate. The trouble with Vegas, though, is a lot of the places we went to, you're going to see a lot of undisclosed location because we had to sign NDAs because these hotels and businesses on the Strip didn't want people to know they were haunted.
Sure.
Even though I don't get it because other places we have, they've been on other shows. So it's like, okay, you're going to let this show do it, but you're not going to let us do it. It's like, okay, whatever,
Right.
But it ended up turning more into a part of it like a whodunit, because as I started deep diving into that even more, every location we investigated had some type of tie to mob activity.
Okay.
Even the Boulder City Pet Cemetery is believed to be a dumping ground for bodies because it's in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
And I really, really wish that Lake Mead started to drain sooner because just as soon as I sent it off to the publisher, they found in one of the barrels out there that they found, the dead body was actually the spirit of someone haunting Circus.
Oh, wow.
And they can never find his body, but they found it just after it went off to the publisher and was being printed.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember reading about them finding somebody in a barrel. Mm-hmm. Which definitely, to me, right away goes straight to mob.
Right. Yeah. So it turned into a lot of mob activity. And I mean, one of my favorite stories is we were investigating a location that was the former Copa room. And all of a sudden I had something, and it was a public investigation. So of course we had one of the guests was carrying the spirit box everywhere they went, and something grabbed my butt. And I just turned around and yelled, "Who grabbed my butt?" And we get clear as day on the spirit box, me.
So who did you think it was?
It's someone who hung out in the Copa room. We didn't get an answer, but it was just funny how that all tied in, and everybody in the room just started laughing.
Yeah, that would be
a trip.
That would be. And then tell us a little bit about your other book, Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns.
Yeah, that book was interesting. That got me started. When we were filming, it was during the pandemic. We had received a call from Motion Picture Video. They were out in Vegas, and they wanted to know if we could go with them because they wanted to feature a family of paranormal researchers in their upcoming documentary, Real Haunts Ghost Towns. And we had done all the research ahead of time on all the different ghost towns from Tonopah South, and actually went and investigated Goldfield and Gold Point and Nelson and, El Dorado Canyon and all of those areas. And I had all these notes sitting there, and a friend of mine, he had said to me, because he had been writing for History Press for a while, he's like, "Why don't you submit it to History Press? Here's my contact, and they'll put you in the right contact." And I was like, okay, what the heck? And they loved my notes, and they asked me to start writing the book.
So, but that's in Nevada. There's a lot of like mines and towns, mm-hmm. and I mean, yeah, I would think that's highly haunted there.
Right. Everywhere you go, as far as the the different ghost towns. And like Goldfield, we investigated the Florence mine up there, and we had everything from personal experiences to physical attacks to psychic attacks.
Dang.
Seeing shadow figures. And I mean, you name it, that mine had everything happening.
Now, do you think, you said that was a mine, do you think that that had to do with minerals and the atmosphere? I have no idea. Is that why you think it might be so active?
At first, we didn't think so, but it was funny because the producer had asked me. That was not something we had thought of when we were there, but the producer pulled me aside and was filming and asked me, hey, can you talk to us more about the Nevada Triangle? And I was like, the what? I'm like, I had no clue. And he's like, okay, we'll get back to you. And so then I pulled out my phone, and of course I'm researching the Nevada Triangle, and I was like, oh, it's just like the Bermuda Triangle. And they think that it's happening in Nevada because of the high concentration of gold and silver and zinc and everything that's in the ground. And that's why Area 51 falls within that triangle.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I always tell people that, just because you get interviewed for a documentary or a TV show doesn't mean you know everything. So there I am researching a question that they asked me on camera, and I'm like, huh?
Well, right. I mean, you didn't know.
No, I had no clue. Who knew? I knew of the Alaska Triangle, but had no clue Nevada had one.
Wow. I wonder if every state has one. I would imagine there's probably a triangle in every state. Some more active than others, obviously. So now, how many places did you go check out for the Nevada ghost towns and the mines, or was it just like, hey, you're doing your research and you're like, hey, here's one here, let's go check that out, or?
It was a combination of both. In the beginning, it was the film crew gave us a list of locations they wanted us to research, and that kind of fell into place. And once we had that list, I started deep diving into those and going to the locations. I would say about 90% of that book, I went to all of the locations. There was a couple, like Belmont was a little bit too far north for us to get to in a time. And then I think it was Berlin. You can only get to by ATV or by hiking like 30 miles because there's no roads to get there. And then the same thing with Mount Potosi, where Clark Gable's wife died.
Okay.
And you can only get there by strenuous hiking or ATV. So there's a few places that you just can't get to very easily.
Yeah, because if I had to hike 30 miles to a place, I'd be done by the time I got there. Just saying.
Be like, I'm going to need a helicopter to come get me out of here.
And that's not uncommon. I mean, and the further north you get in Nevada, there's less paranormal activity being reported, which is why I concentrated on southern Nevada. And I think that's more of a combination of these places are too far out of the way from civilization for anybody to get to and report there's activity there. And also being outside of that high concentration of minerals, I think that has something to do with it as well.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. That would definitely be.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. So what do you have coming up? What books do you have that you're going to be? Can you tell us?
Oh, I can. I've already signed the contracts for 4 new books coming out between end of this year and early next year. But the one that I'm working on first is Haunted Florida Ghost Towns. And I've actually discovered that Florida has over 250 ghost towns, and it is number 2 in the United States after Nevada.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
in
awesome.
Ghost towns.
Heck yeah, Florida.
So, yeah.
I would have never thought that.
Right?
Because it's such a new place, Florida's relatively new.
It's not really. I mean, the more research I'm deep diving into it, I mean, you have St. Augustine, which is one of the first cities in the country to have been founded. And I mean, and we have all these, a majority of them are forts that have been abandoned after the Civil War.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the theme parks, are you doing one?
Yep, I have the other ones I'm doing in the same series would be theme parks, roadside attractions, and then Civil War sites.
Wow.
So are these theme parks still open, or are they abandoned?
It covers everything from, well, of course, Walt Disney World. And a lot of Walt Disney World that I'm sharing are personal experience I had working there for more than 15 years.
Wow.
Lucky.
So,
I wanted to work there. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So I have, those different experiences as well as experiences from other employees that I would talk to quite a bit because I was in recreation. So I got to go and wander more than other people could. So I got to talk to a lot of people and, I was a journalist before working for Disney and 101 questions. I'm always asking questions.
I'm looking forward to that one. Awesome.
But then it also includes like the Holy Land closed down and that has paranormal activity. There's several water parks that are no longer in existence that have reports of the police being called or security being called because they see a young boy running around or they're hearing screams at night. So there's a lot of ones that are still in existence and then also ones that are no longer in existence but are still there.
Cool.
Nice. Any books coming up about like Ybor City and them?
No, but I should, because I know, I think History Press already has someone that covered that area, which is why instead of covering a city, I'm covering different types of themes. So I do have on my list of books that I want to work on, like haunted, like pirate sites, Ghosts and Legends of Florida Pirates.
Oh,
I think
nice.
is what it'll probably end up being.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes.
I love anything pirates.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I think I was a pirate in my former life. and I see you have one here, Haunted Florida Roadside Attractions. Mm-hmm. So what might that entail? Like what kind of attractions?
Basically, that book I start off describing what is a roadside attraction and talking about how the interest peaked in the 1950s where people would get in their car and go on vacation.
Yeah.
Instead of, and that's how these fun little roadside, like the largest ice cream cone or the largest basket, and stuff like that. In Florida, we have, the largest orange. Gatorland used to be considered a roadside attraction.
Yeah, that was, yes.
The East Mortella Museum where Robert the Doll is at is considered a roadside attraction.
Oh, right, yeah.
And there's even some cemeteries. We have the cemetery of the oldest man. I think he lived to be 130. We have Bob Ross's grave here in Florida. There's a town that has a grave in the middle of the road. No one knows where it came from, but everyone's afraid to disturb it.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's become a place that people go and look, and take photos at and everything. So it's interesting. There's everything from miniature golf places to, fun stores. And, of course, then you have the little mini zoos that people would put up to keep people there overnight instead of just stopping for fuel and food and rest, hey, here's a hotel next door, stay the night type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I've heard of a couple like up north, like the mystery spot, and I'm like, what the hell's the mystery spot? I gotta go find out.
Or what is it in South Carolina? There's like that big hot dog south of the border.
South of the border. Yeah. I know. Yeah, my sister, I believe, goes that way. When they come to Pennsylvania to visit. So, and they're in Florida too. So, yeah, I was born there. I moved up to Pennsylvania in, I believe it was 77. It was right before our 77 flood here in Pennsylvania. And then I moved back down, spent close to 20 years down there again. And, now I'm back here in Pennsylvania. I don't know where I want to be, actually.
Tennessee, babe. Tennessee.
Completely the opposite way.
That's why we came back to Florida. And Vegas was fun. We lived in Henderson. You could have almost considered that we lived in Boulder City. We were so far out. But it was nice. We were there 7 years, but it was time to come back home.
And see, Florida right now, it's just too busy for me. Mm-hmm. I was right by Clearwater, Tarpon Springs, Tampa, obviously. Mm-hmm. And US 19 runs right through there. That's, one of the worst highways there is. It was just so busy. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. After a while, it's like, let's have hurricane parties.
Right. Yeah. My parents, they live in Vero Beach, and that's where we're looking to eventually get to. And it's quieter there. It's, far enough away from, West Palm and the bigger cities, but still close enough to go visit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, then you shouldn't be far from like Orlando.
No, we're actually in Lakeland right now where we're at.
Oh, okay. Lakeland. Yep.
So, yeah.
All right. So what kind of plans do you have for your team in the future? What are you guys looking to do?
Right now we're looking to, with moving to Florida, even though we've been here a year and a half, it was kind of disrupted with my knee surgery. We're making a list of different locations we want to go, with different theories we have, and places that we can test those different theories. And we want to help people the best we can. And in my mind, helping people to me means educating other paranormal investigators, and it's not to say that what we do is right, but I think in order to be a proper paranormal investigator, you need to do as much research as you can from many different people.
Right.
So our ultimate goal is to take what we've learned. I am working on creating different presentations. I'm going to be, and actually, depending on what my husband's work schedule is and what my son's work schedule is, we're going to be doing different conventions to actually not be talking about like the scariest cases we've had, but more or less have mini training sessions.
Yes.
Is what they're bringing us to the different conventions for. Instead of, like most people will talk about their scariest stories, they want us to actually do training stuff.
Good. Awesome.
And so we're going to be doing that. And of course, I host 3 podcasts, and that keeps me busy. And then my list of books is ongoing.
Yeah. What's the name of your podcast?
I host Exploring the Paranormal on Tuesday mornings. That one is on WLTK-DB Talk Radio. And I start off that podcast with just kind of like an educational tidbit. Like last week, for example, we spent the first 30 minutes talking about how to plan out your goals and reach your goals. And then the last hour and a half, I'll have a guest on, and we'll talk about their experiences and all the different stuff like that. Okay. And then every other Wednesday night, I co-host Ghost Education 101 with Philip Wyatt. We started that during COVID, and that's more of a educational platform where we do presentations on different things. We have different guests come on. Like last week, we had Johnny Zaffis on for the 2 hours to talk about his experiences and all of that stuff. And then Thursday nights, I host Passport to the Paranormal with Joe Frankie. And it's just half the time we're just ragging on each other and joking around and having fun.
So yeah, you have a lot going on between, you have your Exploration Paranormal website that you take care of, and then the 3 podcasts and special appearances that you make. Things like that. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, what do you have? How many websites do you have?
It's explorationparanormal.com or heatherleighphd.com. It'll essentially take you to the same place.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I was just curious because I'm like,
because I've had people who were searching me by name and not my team name. And they're like, we can't find you. And I'm like, oh, so I went and bought the domain to make it easier for people to find me.
Right. Yeah, because, you're very busy. Now, I got to ask you, what is, like, one of your most memorable cases? You don't have to get into specifics, but, man, I got to ask.
This one wasn't a case, but I'm actually still researching it now, and I'm dying that I haven't been back in 4 years, so I need to get back there. But we were in Gettysburg. I was actually a photography student at the time. I was in college, and I was taking photos. It was 4th of July weekend, so they were doing a reenactment like they did every year, and I was shooting photos around Devil's Den. Nobody was around me. It was quiet because everybody was down at Triangular Field taking photos and watching the reenactment going on. And all of a sudden I came out from the crevice, and you guys have seen that Tom Brady photo with the Confederate sniper that was shot.
I have not.
I've not either.
Okay. Oh, there's a photo where there's a Confederate sniper, and it shows his gun propped up on a rock, and he's laying on the ground. And I had walked out from that area, and this guy dressed in full Confederate attire, looked like a human to me, walked by, didn't say anything, but tipped his hat at me, nodded his head, and kept walking. And I was like, I got to get a photo of this guy. He looked great.
Yeah.
Thinking he was a reenactor.
Yeah.
So I chase after him around the boulder, and nobody's there.
Ooh.
And where I checked the whole boulder. I would have seen him running away. I would have seen him walking away. I would have seen him hiding somewhere. He was nowhere to be found.
Wow.
So then
What happened?
recently experienced, but
Hold on 1 second, okay? Because you're breaking up. I don't know if it's our end or yours.
Oh.
So just give me 1 second. All right, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Go ahead and give us some repeat there.
Okay. Yeah. So, and even my mom had told me, recently that she had experienced something similar and felt heavy presences when she was over in the Devil's Den area, but didn't want to tell anybody. So fast forward to actually just a couple years ago, I started doing some more research on it because it came to mind. I came across the photos that I took, and I came across it was in the Library of Congress, an article about how Matthew Brady's assistant had been told, you need to be the first to get the best and the greatest Civil War photograph from Gettysburg, because photography was new. It was a competition. And it turns out that the Library of Congress has two photos of the same dead Confederate soldier, one at the battlefield and then another one at Devil's Den. And even the assistant photographer admitted he moved the body to stage the photo at Devil's Den.
Oh.
And they finally identified who the soldier was and put his enlistment photo up. And I was like, holy crap, that's the guy I saw.
Oh. Wow, that's a trip.
Yes.
Yeah, so
That's
it's like,
trip.
so now I'm researching more into, who was he, what was he doing? And that, to me, that's my most memorable experience I've ever had with paranormal, because it's the connection. It took 30 plus years, but that connection is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And Gettysburg, man, I'm telling you, I'm watching people's reenactment videos because they're there now. And I'm like, that place has to be so active, especially when those reenactments are going on.
Yeah, just the whole town. You can't walk anywhere without feeling or experiencing something. And Mark Nesbitt has done a great job with his collections of its Ghost of Gettysburg. I think he's up to number 10 now.
Oh,
but
wow.
They're just little paperback books, a few dollars each. I think they're like $9 each.
Yeah.
And they're easy, quick read.
Uh-oh.
You still with us?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Issues.
We're having technical problems here. It's storming all across the United States, and I'm sure we're catching some of it.
On the way,
it looks like it's getting darker out here where we are. All right, you still with us, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's been it's been what, 3 days?
Yeah,
thunderstorms.
3 days. Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me. So, well, that's awesome though. Gettysburg that's a main. I don't know. I love Gettysburg, but we're only 2.5 hours from Gettysburg.
So you better take me. Yeah, I'm just saying.
And we want to get back there. So let me ask you this: you have if someone brand new listening to this podcast says, "Hey, how do I get into all this stuff?" What do they got to do?
I always suggest new people find a mentor and someone they trust. Whether it's find a local team that you can tag along, because you don't really want to go out and spend all the money on equipment and dive into investigating until you either A, know what you're doing, or B, decide you like it. I know so many people who've spent, a couple hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on equipment. They go on their first paranormal investigation, and the next thing you know, they're contacting me to buy their equipment.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't like it. So find out if you like it first. And do all the research you can. I spend, if not an hour or more reading, and some of the stuff I kind of roll my eyes at, but I'm still taking the time to read different people's books, different people's, blog posts,
Yeah.
And YouTube plays in the background while I'm working. And it's just do everything you can to learn.
Right.
Are you listening to YouTube when you're writing your books?
Yeah.
You are? Okay. Because I was wondering, I got some books going that I need to finish, and I'm like, she's got all these books. What do you do? What kind of discipline do you have to make yourself just sit down and freaking write a book?
Yeah, it's more for just background noise. I mean, a lot of people are like, I get distracted. I mean, I even have the History Channel, not the History Channel. Well, History Channel is one of the ones that I have on a lot, but Travel Channel. And I don't watch it a lot because sometimes, you roll your eyes at a lot of the paranormal shows, but
Yes.
It's background noise.
Okay.
And, my husband comes in the room. He's like, really, more ghost stories? I'm not even paying attention to what they're talking about.
Yeah, because it does get redundant.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be disciplined too, because I mean, like I said, I started off, I went to school for communications and journalism and photography. And, so I grew up, in my early 20s, writing and researching and doing all of that stuff. So I'm able to tune stuff out, which a lot of people can easily get distracted. Like, let's say you're watching Ghost Adventures and they pull out a new piece of equipment. It's like, I got to pause my book writing and watch to see what they do with this new equipment.
Right.
I just tend to ignore it. Yeah.
Now, you said you went to school for photography, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get this out of the way. What are orbs? I got, because you're a professional photographer,
right?
And when you tell people that, hey, this is a piece of dust, and this is how we know that it's a piece of pollen or what, it's.
I've lost friends over orbs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. What people don't realize, and that's where education comes into play, because the older cameras that were film and flash, you still had lens flare.
Sure.
But they didn't have the infrared light that came out of the camera. Even if you're using your phone, it still has an infrared light that shoots out to focus. And the cameras back in the day didn't have that. And that's what people don't realize. And that's where getting to know your equipment comes into play. So people are like, oh, it's not the infrared picking up a bug because my phone doesn't have it. And it's like, well, it does.
Yes.
But trying to say it nicely to someone, it's especially when you hear that over and over and over, or like the bug crawling on the lens, or, I really like the one Ghost Adventures episode that they did when Grant restarted the team. And he actually showed that on an infrared night security camera that it was a cobweb, not someone walking across the hallway. So I really like that they were trying to do that. And that's what people need to realize.
Yes.
Is, even if it's, you've cleaned your camera lens or anything like that, you're still going to get lens flare from multiple lenses being within the camera.
Sure.
And it's my favorite. I mean, I'm guilty of it, but my favorite is when people take photos with the flash on at a mirror and then try to say something's paranormal. And it's like, well, try not shooting directly at the mirror. But I'm guilty of searching windows and mirrors for stuff too. So
Sure.
I think we all are.
Yes. But see, that's perfect, because I know what a bug looks like. You get these rods in there and it's just so overexposure or whatnot. And these are the things, I mean, I get that people want to believe so much that speck of dust has a face in it, and that's Grandma Betty, Mm-hmm. But in reality, you have to step back and say, hey, look, okay, I can see that this should be a piece of pollen, or, you know what I mean, microscopic, and it gets in front of that lens when you snap that picture. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about like Polaroid? I've seen some pretty crazy stuff in Polaroid film.
Yeah, those turn out really interesting. I just wish it wasn't so expensive to use Polaroids nowadays, but because it's considered antique.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's but the other thing you have to watch out too is sometimes with Polaroids, if the cartridge has been contaminated, if it's gotten wet or overheated, it can cause different things to appear on the actual picture, and you just need to know what that would look like.
Sure. Because that's like the person that takes their camera out to the cemetery and it's a chilly night and their skin is radiating some steam and they don't see it until they take the picture, and then they think it's some kind of a ghost that's coming to get them or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yes, that's what you're doing with this educating people is phenomenal. And I wish that more people would collaborate with others with their purported evidence, because that would eliminate a lot of the stuff.
It would, and that's the thing that I just don't get. It's like everybody, is out there crying para-unity, and it's great in theory, but no one follows through with it. I mean, I knew one group in Vegas who they were always bragging, we're the one and only team that investigates, X, Y, and Z location, and no one else can ever get in. It's like, why? Why are you hoarding this? You need to let others in, so they can either confirm or deny whatever activity you're getting. What activity are you getting? Why aren't you sharing it?
Exactly.
And it's so heartbreaking that so many teams are so closed off.
Right. And it's like that with anything. If Ronnie and I got an EVP and we was unsure, and we would send it to you and say, hey, you got to give this a listen. Tell me what you think. And we come to a consensus of what we believe it is. Does it go down to someone is afraid that their stuff is going to get stolen? Like, we wouldn't do that because, if we'd send it to you, you would steal it. And I don't understand where the mentality is.
I think it's a combination of that. It's three things. The combination of they're afraid other people are going to steal their experiences or their evidence. Number two would be they want to feel special and they want to be the only team. So that way, when ghost hunters or ghost education or ghost hunters come knocking on the door for teams to be on their show, they're the only team that's been there. So, who are they going to call the only team that's been there?
So they can have their 5 minutes of fame there and think they're special.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or they don't want to be, I don't really want to say outed as a fraud, but they don't want to be saying, oh, this location is haunted, but no, you can't go there. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, because they don't want people to prove them wrong.
Right. Which comes down to, not being honest and wanting the likes and followers and ratings.
Yeah. And I always joke, I was on my radio show, was it last week? Yeah. I had Joe Frankie on, and we were joking back and forth about how neither one of us are in this for the likes. And someone who we knew commented a joke in the comments and said, well, my gauge of a good paranormal investigator is he who has the most likes on YouTube. And I jokingly joked back, I'm like, well, that's not me. I think I have 10. And Joe's like, I have 10 less than you.
Yeah, because, we're doing this because we love the field. Mm-hmm. We love to try to validate things that has happened to us. Mm-hmm. So what better way? And if you can help other people learn these things, then that is what it's about. Not the likes, the followers, not Zach Bagans, not, Nick Groff, even though I really like Nick. It's these, you have to get away from the TV.
Right.
I think that's...
And I always tell people
social
that...
media is the problem, because everybody wants to be popular and number one.
Social media is. But I would rather consort with somebody who has very little followers and that. Then
I just use social media to stay in contact with people. I do post. I have a strict schedule that I use, and I sit down the week before the end of the month and I post the next month's schedule out. And, and that's it. I let it run on its own.
Right. Yes.
But, because you do have to keep people entertained to a point, but everything I share is usually either educational related or, paranormal questions and stuff like that. Right.
And that's good. I wish that, like you said, you hear all about this para-unity stuff, but it's, in theory, it's good, but in reality, it is not. And the only thing I see that is para-unity is a bunch of people going to pay-to-play places and being a social club. Mm-hmm. And I don't get me wrong. I like places like Waverly and Penhurst and, Villisca and all those places. But can you really investigate them and get any kind of validation? No, because they're public ghost hunts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the biggest problem with that. It's like, I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to be anything we see in our lifetime unless a miracle happens. But part of my wanting the paranormal field to be more scientific is I want it to be more regulated. It's all fine and dandy to be a hobby, but, if you look at like the scientists back in the day, Tesla and all of those guys, they went through the same things we're going through now, where it was a new field essentially. Right. And, people are all wanting to be a part of it because they want to be part of the next best thing. But something needed to be done to weed people, not so much weed people out, but to separate the people who want to do this professionally and help people from those who want to do it as a hobby.
Right. Yeah, because
if it takes, government standardizing, just like the, your pest control guy.
That's right.
That might be what we need.
And that's like Tesla. You had just brought up Tesla, and he was doing the AC current, and who was it? Bell or not Bell? I can't get my history straight right now. Was it Edison?
I think so.
He had the DC.
That's the name that was coming to mind.
Yeah, he had DC, and anytime Tesla would say, "Hey, AC's better. It travels farther." The ones that were messing with DC are like, no, that's, ours goes farther. And you know what I mean? So yeah, there was a huge battle over it. And that seems to be the way the paranormal field is going. It's always a constant battle.
Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be. We're never going to be able to help people. And I mean, I get that people want to help, but I truly, and I know I'm going to get criticized for this. I get criticized for it every time I say it. But if we're going into people's homes, even though there's no way to gauge whether paranormal activity is happening, because it's one of those things, a lot of it's subjective. There's no way to know if you've cleansed a home or anything like that. But I truly do believe that there needs to be some way to prove that the team you're calling into your home is reputable.
Exactly. Because
we don't have that.
I've done residential. I've done hundreds of residential and business clients, and the psychological repercussions of someone telling someone their house is haunted that's a huge deal. I mean, someone believed that, and they're going to be like, "Oh my God!" And people do this all the time. They go to places and they say, "Oh, it's haunted. There's demons and it's evil." But the psychological ramifications of you saying this to a client is horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. And I don't know how many times I get people calling me saying that they had a team in and they came in and did the investigation and then left them high and dry, which just proves they only wanted access to the home to get their evidence and not really help the client.
That's right.
Or there's one team here in Florida that went in to help a client, and they posted photos all over social media of what they captured at this woman's house. But when you look at the photos, because the woman even sent us the photos to analyze, and she said that there's like a spirit in every room, and it was in the same spot. It was just this weird white lightning streak, and it was in every spot. So immediately I'm thinking there's a scratch on the camera lens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's in every spot. So they're telling this woman it's haunted. Look, here's the proof. And it's in every room of your home. But then they are at a cemetery 2 weeks later saying, "Oh my God, check out this ghost. It's everywhere we went in the cemetery. Same spot, same lightning streak."
Oh my God.
And it's
I would bust them people out. I'm just saying.
I wanted to, but I try to be the nice person. So I just kind of I help the client outside of that. And explain to her what she got and everything.
Yeah.
But it just, I've even come across people sending me photos. One of the recent blogs that I wrote was about, stop faking or stop sharing fake paranormal evidence.
Yes.
And she sent me a whole bunch of photos of this little girl in her home. And they were using the iPhone Ghost app.
Oh, man.
And they sent it to this woman telling her home was haunted.
Oh my God. That is so wrong.
And see, that's what we need to weed out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and me, I don't have a problem. I've done ghost cleanup from other crews.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I have no problem calling, because the first thing I did was, well, can you tell me the name of the team that was in here? Because I'm going to call them and I'm going to tell them what I think. Mm-hmm. Because you can't just go in and say that there's something there. You have to be a contractor. You have to know what air conditioning does and how it works. You need to know plumbing and how it works. I mean, it's just something. You don't just walk in and there's scratching on the wall and you say it's a demon when it's a mouse.
Right.
And
yeah.
And I've seen so much of it. I get frustrated with it because I'm extremely. I love this field. I love the. How do I want to put it? I love the what the paranormal field should be and how it was when I was young. But now when I mention these things, people are like, well, times have changed. And I'm like, but the investigation method did not. Even though you have Mel meters now, which we didn't have it back then, it did not change except for some new tools.
Yeah, and I do firmly believe, I mean, the TV shows are good in theory as well, because they are bringing up to a point a positive light to the field, that it's not taboo anymore. But I also think that people need to use critical thinking when watching these shows and realize that they are for entertainment purpose. And sometimes what you see, not so much is faked, but is edited to make sure you're seeing evidence.
Yes.
And, you know, like I think we talked about it earlier, is what people don't realize is, you know, like Ghost Adventures. I was recently on one of their episodes, but of course I called in from Florida because I wasn't in Nevada when they filmed it. And I know for a fact, just because I had talked to Jeff, who is their producer, that they filmed that episode for over a month.
Yes.
To just get their hour and a half worth of footage that they showed.
Yes. And that makes perfect sense. Because when I go into a residential home or business, I'm going to be there for 2 days at least on a residential, but it could be 3 or more on a business. Right. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It takes a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like when we do it, we'll go in the first time, and if we have evidence, we'll go back a second time just to confirm it. If we don't have evidence, but the client claims that the activity is picking up, we'll go back in just to see if maybe we just didn't get anything the first time. But it's usually, 3 or 4 visits over the course of a month to a month and a half, just to spread it out and, confirm or, disprove some of the stuff that we're experiencing.
Right. That's right. Well, I'll tell you, we would definitely love to collaborate with you with a more scientific approach, because that's how we are. We want it's not just about a ghost app and it's saying something. We need to validate. So we're not just going to use one ghost app. We're going to use maybe a ghost app, and then we're going to use SB7 or 11, something like that. We're going to keep trying to see if we can get it to validate on other things as well.
Right.
So, but we would definitely like to collaborate with you in the future. And I want to thank you for coming on. This last minute, I'm extremely honored that you come on. I was going to get with you and schedule something, and because I've seen your post, and I've seen you posting about your group, and I'm like, I need to get on. And I can't remember what I seen recently. It was something about, it was a 101. I think it was digital recorders. I think something you was talking about how to use digital recorders. And I was like, we need to get her on here, because she would be perfect to talk with general paranormal and what we think is going on. And so, yes, I really thank you a lot for coming on here last minute.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And definitely we're going to collaborate. And I can't wait to see these. You have a new book. It's coming out.
Yeah.
This Lighthouses. Everybody loves Lighthouses.
Yes, I'm going to paint some.
I'm definitely, I can't wait to read that, because living in Florida, And I'd see one and I'd be like, ooh, there's got to be a story behind it. And who knows, you might have one of those in there that I've went past and did that.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. And I might end up doing a sequel to that one just because, like I said, I was on bed rest the entire time I was writing that book. And I really wish I'd gotten out more to do more.
Yeah.
Right.
You totally should do that.
Well, that's like your precursor to the next one that's going to be even better yet.
That's what's up.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. You guys have a great night.
All right.
too.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in with us tonight, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content from Paranormally Podcast is made available. If you believe you have something paranormal happening in your home or business, or you believe you may have witnessed a UFO or UAP, please send us your story, your photos, videos, questions, suggestions, and your comments to paranormallypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at www.paranormallypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Hey, thanks again for watching and listening, and I hope that you tune in for next week's episode of Paranomaly. Hey, a word of caution. Paranormally Podcast and its affiliates or hosts do not verify or check the validity of any person, team, or its members. Paranormally Podcast highly advises that you proceed with caution when contacting any person or team before allowing them and having them into your home or business. A legit paranormal research and investigation team will never charge you a fee to investigate your home or business. They do, however, accept donations to help further the research and investigations if you so choose to do so. All right, thanks everybody.